Welcome back to Brave Ideas, where we chat with the leaders in commercial real estate to answer all questions space as a service and help office real estate reposition to meet the evolving demand from the future of work. This podcast is for anyone involved in commercial real estate in any way. If you're an investor, fund manager, developer, landlord, operator, property manager, agent, or broker, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you prefer to watch the full episode and join our newsletter, head over to braveideas.media. I'm your host, Caleb Parker, and for this episode, I traveled from London to Amsterdam to get a tour of Mr. Green offices and check out their Superflex experience and tech platform called NetOS. I was super curious, and fortunately, Rogier Braakman obliged my curiosity with a sit-down chat. Rogier is the CEO of Mr. Green Boutique Office Collection and Green.DNA. With over 2 decades of hospitality leadership experience, including Ritz-Carlton, Hilton, Santon Hotels, Pillows Hotels, and Pinta Hotels, Rogier brings deep expertise in hotel operations, brand development, and real estate strategy. Today, he's applying that hospitality mindset to office real estate, building sustainable and flexible office solutions that help reposition underutilized buildings for the future. Naturally, every episode this season, you know what I'm going to say. Joining me to kick off this episode is my friend Sam Gamble, co-founder of Return Suite, our headline sponsor this season. Sam, this episode with Rogier, it really challenges everything we think we know about office utilization. And I got to let you in a little secret here. So Rogier told me that our episode that we had with Ben Wright last season, when we talked about Superflex, he said that's what helped them define what they're doing.
Oh, wow. Geez, well, you know what they're doing in the Netherlands, it really is like a total rethink of how we can monetize office space, instead of selling space by the square foot on long-term leases, which we know we're moving away from. They're selling it on kind of time-based memberships layered on with kind of real-time utilization data.
Yeah, we're not talking about monthly memberships, that where you get unlimited access. It's really, really time-based. There's this line that Rogier used to quote, "The only sustainable office is a fully utilized one." And I think utilization is obviously a big topic. Their model flips the traditional dynamic. Companies subscribe to specific days of the week that they want office space for their teams. And then Mr. Green, which is their operating platform, uses dynamic pricing to smooth demand and optimize occupancy, very similar to the hotel industry.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, it just kind of, it almost sounds like kind of Uber surge pricing, right? So if like kind of on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, if they're cheaper, companies will kind of naturally shift their behavior. And Mr. Green can then resell the same office space to multiple companies across different days. I mean, it's like office space yield management meets kind of Uber surge pricing.
It is exactly that, and it is changing behaviors. And you can really see his hospitality background shine through in this episode. They built a fully integrated operating system. I said this earlier, NetOS. And what it does is it manages bookings. It personalizes each office with the tenant customer branding on demand. It dynamically allocates space based on actual usage patterns. It's really cool.
What's fascinating is how that data unlocks massive efficiencies. Rather than every company taking 5 days worth of private office they don't use, Mr. Green captures true demand, flexes space across tenants, and dramatically boosts the utilization per square meter.
Yeah, he actually addresses that. He says most people take space for their maximum potential days, and what they're doing is taking space for their minimum potential days. It's really interesting. And from a landlord perspective, Rogier's bigger vision is offering this NetOS platform as a solution. Landlords could deploy this system in the underperforming assets or underutilized floors via this, quote, Superflex type shared office model, while still preserving this long-term anchor tenants in the building.
His Canary Wharf example really crystallizes the idea. You take back the surplus corporate floors, plug in the NetOS system, and create kind of a shared lung of space that multiple tenants can draw on as they overflow without locking themselves into inefficient footprints.
Yeah, he kind of describes it as breathing. We breathe in and out, we flex up and down. And, maybe this is exactly where the industry needs to go. Flexible building infrastructure that gives landlords and occupiers a way to collaborate on utilization.
Yeah, I mean, and just, as the operational data grows, NetOS could even become kind of a global flex distribution platform, similar to like hotel room aggregators, powering a network of buildings with shared utilization logic.
Big vision for this, I think, and there's a lot of ways I think it can scale. One of the most scalable, financially innovative, and operationally intelligent flex models that I think I've seen so far. A lot of landlords, I think, is going to want to study this one really carefully, and I'm curious to see how you might plug it into your underwriting.
Yeah, that's a really good question. How to underwrite for something so dynamic, and I'm excited to hear your conversation.
Let's do it. 3, 2, 1, kick it. Welcome to Brave Ideas, Rogier.
Thank you, Caleb. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be here in Amsterdam, right at Central Station. We're continuing our global season, this season 15. And thank you for having us in Mr. Green offices. I want to kick this off actually because you've got a background in hospitality, and I want to hear a little bit about your background and what led you to Mr. Green offices.
Yeah, so let me keep it short because I've been in the business for quite a while. No, I was actually educated in hotel school here in the Netherlands, and then I actually pursued my path throughout Ritz-Carlton, Hilton, and I created my own hotel company back in 2004, which was called Senton Hotels. We created a new brand afterwards, Pillows Hotels, which are boutique luxury hotels in cities, with a very simple target. I just wanted to be number one on TripAdvisor because I believe that if you have happy guests, right, you can dictate rates. And if you're number one on TripAdvisor, there's always people say like, I just want to stay in the best hotel. And actually, if I look at that collection of hotels nowadays, they're always I think the one in Amsterdam is currently number one. And I sold my share back in 2018, started a small investment firm focusing on tech investments. Then became CEO of Penta Hotels in Frankfurt. Started on February 1, 2020. Well, that was interesting until with COVID. So I've been in hotel business all the time, basically. And what made me lead towards Mr. Green offices is very simple. In hospitality, in hotels, we always look at occupancy, right? In a hotel, when I walk into a hotel, what was your occupancy? How many rooms were occupied last night? Because it's a perishable product. You cannot sell a room again that you did not sell yesterday. And a friend of mine, who happens to be the owner and founder of Mr. Green offices, had come up with this incredible idea of actually putting tech into offices and enabling companies to actually rent offices when they needed them. So not anymore a fixed space, but I said, I just need offices every Monday and Tuesday, but not on Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. And then the fact that he created this, and then there's so many offices out in the world that are underutilized, while we still have a real estate problem. I thought, like, how can this be that companies are renting spaces that they're not using?
I want to dive into that for a second here.
Yep.
And you said your friend who started this. Let's give him a shout out.
Yeah, for sure. His name is Sam Verwaayen. Verwegen for the internationals amongst us. And he has started the idea of Mr. Green offices, I think 6 or 7 years ago. He also has a background in event spaces, bought his first office real estate, really tuned it nicely. And then he said, magnificent tenants, but they were just not there. So he said, I wanted to create a buzz. And I walked through my office space and it was just empty. And how can you create a buzz? How can you make sure that people are working together and it's really nice. I mean, people are paying the rent and we're making a lot of money without adding a lot of value. And he said, I wanted to change this because I think it's just a waste of space if we rent it out and it's not utilized. So he felt like, okay, what I should do then, I guess, is make it more appealing and perhaps sell it to 2 or 3 people at the same time. But in order to do so, right, I need to be able to make sure that I create an environment where I can flip identity all the time. So today we're here actually in the Brave Corp office at Mr. Green offices in Amsterdam. And in the afternoon, this can be the Nikon office or the Canon office, and then the identity is fully swapped.
Whoa.
And that's going way too quick.
Hold on.
That was, I think, just to give you a shout out why someone who is coming from hospitality and who's used to servicing different guests on different days, that this makes complete sense.
I think it does make complete sense, and it makes sense that the brand is called Mr. Green Offices because what you described about people having offices but not being in them, and great for driving the rents, but it's not very green.
No.
So the concept of the people using it in different days, different companies, different days. Today we're in the Brave Corp podcast studio. Tomorrow is Nikon's meeting room or whatever, or office for 10 people.
Yeah.
That's a head explosion for many people in office real estate world. And a lot of my audience invest in offices or maybe used to invest in offices and they're trying to figure out what to do now.
Yeah.
And I think this is why I'm really excited to be here today and talking to you and taking a tour of this, because I see what you described to me a few weeks ago. I see it in real life and it just really makes sense. What I want to do is kind of go back to the brand for a second. Mr. Green Offices. Is that why the brand is called Mr. Green Offices? Because this is a green solution to offices?
I think being green, I think, is a nice side catch. Mr. Green is basically a spin-off from the Green DNA company. So everything that Sam and his team back in the days wanted to establish is make sure that everything they do has a sustainable flavor. And so the mother company was called Green DNA. And then he thought like, okay, if we can create an office, then Mr. Green would be nice. There's a lot of people saying like Mr. or Mrs. or gender neutral and so on. That doesn't have to do anything with it. I mean, we could also have used the name Miss Blue. What we want to create are actually office spaces that are not Mr. Green. You're not with Mr. Green. You're actually in your own office. So we're now at the Brave Corp office. We're not in what many competitors do and create a brand where you say, oh, we rent at that space. No, you are now at Brave Corp offices here at the Station Square in Amsterdam. So Mr. Green for us, like we say, we do not really have this big impact on our name. We just wanted to make sure that green is in there. And the only thing what we're saying is the only sustainable office is a fully utilized one. And that's actually something that we try to achieve within our group.
I like a phrase that you said earlier is that we need to get away from thinking about paying things in square meter or square feet and really paying for things in time.
Yeah.
Rate based on time, revenue based on time.
Yeah.
And utilization.
No use, no pay, basically.
And so again, head explosion, because that's a complete paradigm shift for the real estate industry.
Yeah.
When we're used to selling space and now we're selling time and experience. The co-working world does that to some extent because you're buying a membership and you can use it as much or as little time as you want to, but you're not co-working per se. You said co-officing.
Yes.
Because you've got the private offices.
Yeah.
I want to give the listeners, I want to paint a picture for them. First of all, everybody that's listening should visit Mr. Green offices. You've got multiple locations now.
Yep.
And you're an operator. But when I walked in this morning, I walked down into the ground floor, got this beautiful lounge, amazing, lots of coffee options, teas, food. And then you come up to the first floor and then you've got these various private offices that are for the different companies. Some might say it's a newer version of serviced office, but I would say it's completely different.
Yeah, it is. That makes it so difficult. That's why we actually lure everyone into the office and say, like, there's no point in explaining it if you have not seen it. And that's not to be condescending, but it's just we're figuring it out ourselves. Literally, what we did a couple of years ago was that when we started, and there's plenty of beautifully appointed offices out there. Many might be nicer than ours. I mean, that's a thing about, right? That's personal preference. But I think what we are doing differently is that we circulate everything around the tech component, because you need to have the best workstations. In the end, this is not a resort, but this is an office. People have to make money for their managers or for the companies they're working for. So it's in the end, we're all output driven. And I think that's the basic purpose of an office nowadays. Output driven, working together, right? And being there when my colleagues are there. I think I see so many discussions about, oh, let's close the offices on Fridays, or CEOs that are saying, I'll drag everyone back into the office. You have to go to the office again for 5 days. I'm not sure if they literally want their staff to be back into the office for 5 days, because we all see that it's pointless to just learn to end up in traffic jams and so on and lose a lot of productivity. The only thing is, if you do not have the tools to actually redesign your working week in a way that you can bring your co-workers together. When I'm traveling to Amsterdam, I know that Caleb is also there. Then I'm actually willing to make the journey, right? But if I go to Amsterdam in the end, Caleb says, well, I decided to work from home nowadays. My manager might say, hey, guys, something is going wrong here. And I think that the autonomy in many companies has gone into a different direction, that people are in charge now of their own working weeks, which sounds really nice, right? That I can design my own work week. But the counter effect is that if I think about our members here who actually want to work together and achieve their company goals, that's in the end what we need to facilitate, I think, as an office operator or properator, whatever you like to call us. And by giving companies the options to have their teams work together when they want to, in a space that they can use when they need it and only pay for it when they need it, that opens up a completely new ecosystem that wasn't there before. And we actually hit on it, I think, not by surprise, by creating our own workstations, how we call them. So desks with the best tech on it, and that we remotely control. So we have a control room where we can actually set up all the desks to the need of your company. So with your branding, with your signing, so that I know, hey, well, here, this is my desk for today. And I can just sit along the people that I need to work with. And if you look at it from this way, I think employers should be in charge of the work week of their employees again. But that doesn't have to be 5 days a week. Perhaps in certain industries, yes. But if we decide that for us, it works best to work together 3 days a week. Let's say that's the Monday and the Tuesday and the Friday. That's fine. Then you book a membership with us for Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. And we will make sure that you will get the office for 6, 8, or 10 people in your identity. And it's here when you need it. When you leave, someone else can use it again.
So often I hear some of my workplace consultant friends talking about their clients and some of the corporate real estate folks saying their big problem is they've got all this space that they don't need, but they need people to come in and use it because they have the space and they need people to use it. And so the policies are driven based on the space that they have. What you're saying, I think the argument you're making is if you strip back all the policies and rebuild them based on what's going to make the team cohesive and productive and successful and work for everybody, then you just procure the space for the amount of time that you need it.
Absolutely.
I want to go a little bit deeper on the practical level. So Brave Corp.
Yeah.
My co-founder, Rachel and Ian, we want to come together a couple times a month or a couple times a week. We select the times and the dates that we need them down to the hour, or how does that work?
No. So what we do is, because we also need to have a certain predictability, right? Because our claim is that we can actually sell the same space to multiple companies, because all companies are always exaggerating on the number of hours that they think they're on the office. If you ask any corporation, so the Brave Corp, imagine Brave Corp has 10 people, right? And I ask you, Caleb, and you've got your own fixed setup now somewhere in London, very fancy with 10 desks. And I ask you, what's your occupancy right now? And you're probably going to tell me, I think we're in the office on average 3 days a week. But you don't know, because you don't have the tools, you don't have the access data, you don't have the literal technical tools to actually measure it. So if I would ask you, Caleb, you don't have to rent this space anymore for 5 or 7 days a week, which you're actually paying for right now. How many days would you like to be in the office with your team? I mean, you might say like, oh, well, Tuesdays and Thursdays are horrible in traffic in London. And if I could work from home and my entire team could work from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would like to be in the office on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So what you do with us is then you take a membership for 10 people from Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, given that those 10 people will always be in the office on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But you've got two colleagues who don't work on Fridays. So for those two colleagues, you don't take the Friday membership. We add this up, and we've got different prices for different days of the week. The reason why our Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are busiest, and that's, I think, is the biggest paradigm shift, is because we've made the Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays way cheaper than Tuesdays and Thursdays. So everyone are talking about the camel week, right? Like, oh, we can't control our work week anymore because Tuesdays and Thursdays are super busy. That's why we need to have these big offices. But the rest of the week, they're just empty. And we're not even talking about Saturdays, Sundays, and evenings. So if you look at utilization of the building, that's pretty scary when you think about 168 hours in a week and you only use them for 20 hours, right? And there's a scarcity in real estate. That doesn't sound very green to me. So for you, you could we've got literally here in Amsterdam companies that said like, oh, so happy. We don't have the office 5 days a week anymore with 10 people. And we're here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And guess what? They're now all here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays because they know that their colleagues are actually going to be in. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they can do whatever they like. Some still come into the office, but most of them will work from home. And this way you can actually redesign your work week based on the needs that you have with your company goals. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but what leaves me wondering is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, if these companies are booking the space Monday, Wednesday, Friday, is the space sitting empty on Tuesday and Thursday?
No, because there's also Tuesdays and Thursdays. The only thing is, what we try to prove is that by dynamic pricing days, you can actually make sure that you start playing the occupancy game in offices also, so that offices get better utilized. In any city in the world, I can see that Fridays people are just trying to seduce, companies are trying to seduce their employees to get back into the offices. But if your Friday costs half of Thursday, what do you think happens? Many companies say like, oh, if I can actually save money, maybe it's even better. Maybe I would like to be in the office on Friday way more than on Thursdays because Fridays are not that busy. So what we see is how we sell our spaces is that we normally start with the shoulder days because companies are literally very cost conscious nowadays. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays get sold first, and then the Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we balance it out.
So then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it's sold to Brave Corporation on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Microsoft is in on Saturdays and Sundays. Some creative agencies in.
Perhaps at even lower pricing.
Yeah.
That we're not there yet. I mean, that's why I call this also anthropological experiment. The fact that we can do this unlocks a lot of opportunities that we were not even sure about. So we see companies now, they say like, oh, Rogier, we've got 30 people and we're going to be in 4 days a week. And we say, sure. And they say, I want that office back there with 10 people, 4 days a week. And what happens? They're going to use it once because then they say, well, I'm actually in a little team with 4. We're working on a certain project. We want to book the Tuesdays and the Wednesdays with the 4 of us in this office over there. And we'll just tailor it and say, okay, fine. You get your logos in there. People just walk in and walk out. And on the other day, we'll find them back in another office. So the dynamics change completely. And like I said, that is, I think, a huge boost for output, where in big conventional offices, your desk is at that side of the room and my desk is normally at that side of the room. And if we meet, we need a meeting room together. But in our concept, you would say, hey, Caleb, should we just book these 2 desks together tomorrow? And then we can work together, right? And you see a complete shift in how a real estate facility is actually used. And to be honest, we're still learning it from it ourselves.
Well, I can imagine that if you put this onto a booking system and collect the data, there's a lot of learnings from that, which I want to dive into in a moment.
Yeah.
But I want to take a moment to bring in a word from our sponsors. If you're a landlord, operator, or investor without a big team or expensive tools, this is for you. Did you know you don't have to be a freak in the sheets to compete with the REITs? I'm talking about spreadsheets. You know how painful it is. Long builds, fragile formulas, missing assumptions. And even when it's finally working, you still wonder if you can trust it, let alone present it with confidence to investors and lenders. Return Suite changes all of that. Save hours or even days. Its intuitive interface lets you model a property's cash flow in minutes with no Excel mastery required. Model with precision, enter actual rent, CapEx, debt, lease roll schedules, and much more. Build trust by collaborating in real time, upload operating cash flows, and generate polished, transparent reporting dashboards for any stakeholder. With Return Suite, you're in control. Every assumption is fully traceable, nothing breaks under real-world complexity. And drumroll for my Brave audience, they're building a flex space module too. Head over to returnsuite.com/brave to start modeling better deals today. Before we dive into this data, massive data, I'm sure you're having to learn about the behavioral aspects and the anthropological experiment, you call it. Does your hotel background, I can only imagine in the hotel industry, we in my experience, you have dynamic pricing. That's something that's been around for 30, 40 years or longer.
Yeah.
Are you bringing that mindset here? Is that where this is coming from?
I think so. I mean, we're here in a recurring business model, right? The biggest differences, obviously, between offices and hotels are office is great because it takes a lot of effort to take someone in, but then you've got recurring model, right? In a hotel, you have to actually search for new guests every single day. And therefore, dynamic pricing in hotels is at a way another level. We also need to be in a predictability business. So if you are a member with us, you don't want to be depending on the fact that it's going to be King's Day here on the 27th of April, and all of a sudden your office is going to be more expensive. So the only dynamics we put in our pricing is that we have put different pricing levels on different days of the week. So a Friday in Jan is as expensive as a Friday in the other months.
Okay.
So the only dynamics in our pricing is based because we want to run the occupancy game. The real cool thing is that anyone, including you, you've been to this office right now, and as of now, you will always walk into an office building and you will see empty desks. That's the unfortunate side effect of visiting this. And actually, when people are in the office right now and said, hey, I was Amsterdam yesterday, it was quite slow in the office. So that's the hospitality or the hotel thing that we see happen over here. Hey, why was this person booking a 4-person office while he was on his own the entire day? That's what actually members are looking at. It's like, right, how can we play this occupancy game? And I think that's a huge gain for the business, especially since in any country we are facing housing issues, right? We don't have enough real estate, and we're literally also on a purpose of making that happen. And how can we actually see what real estate is obsolete and how can we use it in a way better manner, but also from an experience point of view for our members, because that's most important, but also from an operator and also from a property owner perspective, because if you can increase and ramp up your utilization of spaces, in the end, that's good for everyone.
Well, yeah, if you have somebody, one person in an office for 4, then eventually that person is going to churn because they feel like they're overpaying for it.
Could be. Or a person would say like, well, this is my space for today because I'm working on an incredible deal. I would just want to work there, and I take the consequences for the fact that I'm actually paying for 4 desks today while I'm only occupying 1.
Certainly, and I think the old way is you're booking in an office for 4 people on a year or 3 months or even longer, and now all of a sudden you're in there by yourself and your teammates are working from home, and you feel like you're overpaying for an office. Whereas here, it's more intentional because they've decided I've got a project. I'm gonna book the larger space for myself, but on a regular basis, I might book just enough space for my team on the days that I need it.
Absolutely, and you can see that that's definitely a behavioral shift. So we sometimes get questions like, "Hey, can I book this meeting room if I'm only by myself?" So, sure, you can. The only thing is, it will end up in your invoice at the end of the month. And then we say, "Oh, but that's weird." No, because you're also paying for your empty meeting rooms. The only thing is it's already been wrapped in your opaque pricing for your entire rent roll, right? That you're paying for your space that is always yours. No one else can use it. That's why you would just walk in here and have a phone call or whatsoever.
Yeah. I think you're making the comparison to having your own traditional office where you've got a meeting room that sits empty 70% of the time. Whereas here, you're not paying for that 70% of the time. You're only paying for the 30%.
But then it feels like it hurts more, right? It's like if you're a member of a country club and that costs you 2,000 euros a year to be playing golf or whatsoever. You might be playing golf only perhaps 8 times a year. Then you're still paying 250 quid per round, right? But still, for many people, that feels different than when I would just play 6 times and I would have to pay for my green fee every single time. So I think it's just also just a
psychological shift.
That's the thing.
If that's the case, I can imagine there's some onboarding conversations, there's some sales conversations up front with people to get them over that cycle. How are you overcoming those preconceived ideas?
Well, we're just saying, just use it. And we optimize your use after a while. So if we see that some people are just booking big offices all the time for 6 people, well, they're with the 3 of them, we can just show them on the data and say, if you would have booked a smaller office, right, you could save yourself this kind of money. But the cool thing is, I am way more a fan of total housing cost per employee than pure rent costs, because that's what many facility managers are looking at. Like, I'm paying this kind of rent. Yes, but your cup of coffee also costs money. Your IT costs money. Your depreciation on your furniture costs money. Your cleaning costs and so on. So if you look at it from a different perspective and say like, okay, what is my housing cost, integrated housing cost per employee going to be? And my employees on average are only, the behavior of our members, and we've got over 1,000 now, show that they're in the office only 2.1 days a week. But they all, when they actually on board with us, they're going to tell us like, oh, we'll be in the office 3 or 4 days a week. So everyone is underusing or over expecting their actual use. So we hardly see that companies are using way more resources, how we call them, than what they've anticipated. And on the other hand, if you see your office as a business card for your business, if you see your office as an output center to get the result of your company up, and if you see your office as a recruitment tool, then it might not be such a bad thing if you have your team that are actually happy to come over to the office and say, can we also go on Tuesdays? In the end, it's all an output game. But making this dynamic, so in July and December, the invoices will come down because there's more holidays, right? We were used to doing this in hospitality also. And that's how you can just actually see how everything balances out. So far, we always see that the actual use are lower than the predicted use.
I can see the benefits for a customer if I know that my costs are going to be tied to my utilization. If my utilization is 30% of what I'm paying for, massive 70% savings, maybe not 70% because I'm paying a little bit more.
You're paying more per hour, literally.
Yeah.
But you only pay for the hours that you use.
And you're getting a full wrapper service, as there's true space as a service. On the operator side, and your underwriting, I can imagine if you've got slow months in, July and August, how do you then underwrite for that? Do you adjust your staffing levels?
Well, this is nearly 2,000 square meters. So your UK, it's roughly 20,000 square feet. We operate this property with 2.2 FTE, which is not a whole lot, to be honest. We actually educate our members. We want them to actually use this as their home. It's their office, right? It's not ours. So we just ask you once you leave your workstation to actually put the keyboard nicely back, and we don't put any dumpsters in the offices so that everything just stays clean. So it needs to be as labor extensive as possible. So that's one. Like you were saying, I think we've got premier facilities. We've got the best coffee, best tea, and so on. That's all included in a membership. And what I think is most interesting is because of the fact that you think you're going to be here 40% of the time, you actually pay a membership over this 40% of the time, and then you pay per use for the resources that you use. So you basically have a hybrid solution in construction in your invoice, right? So you've got your membership. Let's go back to the Monday, the Wednesday, and the Friday. That's what you pay per employee. And then afterwards, you pay per hour, pay per use for the workstations or the closed offices or the meeting rooms that you book.
Okay.
So there's always, for us also from a landlord perspective, there's always recurring and stable membership income, like when you're in a country club or whatsoever.
Is there a, when that base membership fee, that's a per person, and based on and that fee's based on what days you're selecting.
Yeah.
And then the variable is the amount of hours, but is there a number of hours wrapped into the base?
No. But the good thing is with a membership, you have access to any of our facilities, so any of our sites. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Rotterdam or in Amsterdam or in Zwolle, you can just use the facilities and you just can go in. You can use the main floor where you enter.
The lounge.
The lounge. There's an e-gym that is always, whether you're only on Friday membership, you can always use the e-gym from Matrix, which I think is just a wonderful perk. Coffee, tea, water are included. So you can always work. The only thing is if you want to actually boost your output and say like, we need a closed office space or we need a meeting room and we need to use the whole technical setup of our NetOS products, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, or use one of those workstations over there. There you pay per hour. And that is also, I think, the interesting thing for a landlord or from an owner perspective is you can actually sell the space twice or three times based on the fact that you've got a membership for Wednesdays, but Caleb is not in London right now. Caleb is in Amsterdam. And that also has to do with behavior that we can check based on our data and say like, okay, this Brave Corp corporation with 10 people that are going to be in on Mondays, Wednesdays, and on Fridays, we'll see that on average, you're still only here with 6. but you're paying for 10 memberships, which means that I have an overflow of 4 spots again. As well, when you're here in the office, you will not be sitting at a workstation anymore for 8 hours a day. It just doesn't happen. We just see people come in at 10 and leave at 2 or whatsoever. This data shows that we can actually, therefore, right, increase the revenue potential massively, because using this Superflex solution, I think you're the inventor of this word Superflex.
I don't know about that.
Well, at least I learned it from your podcast, and that's how we got into contact together. But again, having this insurance policy for a company that you can always use it and that it's always there, right? That is actually like in a sports club, in a gym where there's perhaps 1,000 members, but you only see 30 at the same time. But all these 1,000 members are paying for their memberships. You have access, you can always access it, right? But we know that not everyone is going to be there at the same time. So the revenue potential is 2 times a 3-fold based if you compare it to your normal regular square meter or square feet lease.
Okay. So this is going to be a deep dive podcast. I can tell already. I want to unpack that a little bit just from the financial perspective. So let's use Brave Corp, 10 people for example. We book in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have this initial onboarding conversation of how often we're going to use it. We think Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays is going to be the case.
Yeah.
That then determines my base
membership fee.
Yeah. Now, is that a menu published somewhere, or is that a calculation in some spreadsheet somewhere that you figure out and quote?
No. We just have the fixed prices for the Mondays, the Wednesdays, and the Fridays, and they're the same in any of our facilities. And you can imagine that the Amsterdam Central Station is a little bit more expensive from a land perspective than when you're in the outback in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So you pay the same base membership fee for these days. And we also have a full-time membership or a Tuesdays and a Monday. We just basically use it as brick by brick, and we can actually create your work week in a way that you want it. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So you get your fixed invoice at the end of the month, 10 people, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
And those 10 people have access to swipe, come in, use the lounge,
anywhere,
coffees, any of my location,
any of your location,
any of your location.
Yeah, or your location. So like we told them your location is your office, right?
I've now opened 4 offices in Netherlands.
By the way, that's a cool perk that companies all of a sudden have 6 or 7 locations in the Netherlands that they can just instantly use. Hey, you're hiring 10 people in Rotterdam tomorrow. You don't need a new office. You just put in new memberships and you can just start working from there.
Now,
tech.
When I walked in this morning and came in, I saw a digital board.
Yeah.
And Brave Corp's name was on it, amongst others, other companies.
Yeah.
So if Brave Corp's booked Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, presumably Tuesday and Thursday, my name's not on the board.
If you book on a Tuesday, which you can, right? And then you get an occasional pass.
Okay, fine.
And you just book a space, then you're on the board over there.
The board is dynamic, so it changes based on who's coming in.
Who's in, actually, or who's coming in. And if you want to invite a guest, right, from Brave Corp, and this person is arriving at 9:45, we've got this entrance over there, then you'll see that the screen will change into your identity. And then if it's Rogier, who is the guest of Caleb from Brave Corp, it will say, welcome to Brave Corp, Rogier, and then we'll be with you shortly. And 10 minutes later, a guest with one of our other members, a Muse or Sprinkler, will be in. And then the signing changes to welcome to Muse. Again, not welcome to Mr. Green. It's your office. And especially the younger people that they just smashed this. I thought we opened that there was Sam and I were sitting in the lounge downstairs. I hope that's fine that I can give a quick anecdote. We just opened and there was this, I think, 25-year-old guy with backpack just walking in, just opening the turning door. He would just walk in and the place barely opened, right? But the fact that we've got the same setup and the same layout and the same workstations everywhere, he would just walk in, just go upstairs, book him a workstation, start working, invited a guest. We were still there. And he was actually doing a tour for his guests and say, well, welcome to our offices. And did you check out our gym yet? And he walked into the e-gym with this guest. And Sam and I were looking at each other and like, what is he bragging about? He has not seen the gym himself yet. But the fact that we've got the same fit out everywhere with exactly the same setup. Once you've been here, you go to a Rotterdam, you will just immediately within 5 seconds, you can sit at a workstation and work in your own Brave Corp identity that we have not seen anywhere yet.
That's a great testament. You guys must have been really excited to see that.
Yeah, no, we encourage other companies to start doing this the same, because co-officing in this way, we believe, can just save so many problems that we have right now in the real estate, office real estate world.
Okay, going back to the Brave Corp example
Yeah.
again, I'm going to keep using
Fine.
my brand. Brand matters, of course. But
Good. Brave Corp, yay.
yay. Okay, so I'm paying the 10 memberships for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Yeah.
We have access. We can come and use the gym, the lounge, invite visitors.
Drink your coffee and tea.
Where I pay more than my base membership is when now I want 4 or 5 or 10 of us all in the same private space.
Yeah.
In this tour we did earlier, you had another room set up for us, another office.
Yeah.
And in that office, all the desktop monitors, the screens, everything had Brave Corp on it. So I'm walking into my branded office.
Yeah.
That now I'm paying an additional cost as a variable cost based on how often I use a private space like that.
Yeah, no, we just have fixed prices per hour to use your workstation. So for instance, I'm not sure how much it costs. I think a desk in a closed office, I think is about €5.50 per hour. So if you have 6 desks in here, it would cost you €33 per hour to rent that space. So if you're here for 8 hours today, you will get €250.
So are you seeing then on the use case, a Brave Corp coming in and using in the morning and that office then turning over to someone else at night, almost like hotels change every night?
Yeah.
Somebody here is using them in the morning and in the afternoons.
Yeah, but then we'll do one deeper dive if you're okay. So if you're
Go
still
for it.
following me,
Yeah.
is we have actually separated our company from the Mr. Green Group because we see that the technology aspect actually enables this mixed use, right? And this dynamic use. So we have like 10 developers working on the entire tech stack within our Mr. Green offices. And we've called this company NetOS, Net Operating System. We're going to go live in a big fair next week here in Rotterdam. But what we are nailing in NetOS, which is going to be an integrated application that you can use with Brave Corp. So the coolest thing that what we think is taking place is that right now, our members have their own WhatsApp groups. Hey, are you going to the office tomorrow? Right? Because you've got your Brave Corp again, 10 people. Who's in the office tomorrow? Oh, we're only with 8. Then you're going to book an 8-person private office, perhaps, or only 4 persons because 4 other persons are in a meeting all day or just want to sit in the lounge or have other activities. So what we're doing with NetOS is we try to tackle this also because we want to make sure that if we optimize, it's a yielding game, right? Which we also did in hotels. We called it rooms control. So there's going to be a group of 30 people. They're going to be in the 15th floor. And this way you actually like to Tetris, and the game of Tetris, you like to Tetris your building fully booked. And especially if you're a hotel here in Amsterdam, you probably also overbook with 10 rooms because we know many people are going to miss their flight or not coming over whatsoever. And then you actually sell twice or sell 1.2 times or day uses and so on. So how cool would it be if you have your NetOS app that are actually asking all of your team members, are you in the morning? Are you joining Caleb and Ian and Rogier tomorrow? And you say yes. Okay, fine. And then we see that you're going to be in with 6 people. And if we know that you're going to be 6 people, we can already book the proper office space for you in order to make sure that we get this entire occupancy game right. And we believe that's going to be a big perk because that's what we often see also in big corporation, that people are actually looking for each other. So like, hey, are you in? Where are you? That's one of the features that we're currently working on.
So that NetOS product that you've mentioned, is that going to be exclusive to Mr. Green Office customers where they can actually have the NetOS product to be able to coordinate their bookings of the Mr. Green Office's spaces? Or are you actually offering that for Brave Corp to use in their own offices?
Yeah, so we start with our own customers, with our own members, so that it's going to be, right, we want to just finalize and improve UX, user experience as much as possible, so that all members can just actually use it and also just, I think, have a way better user experience than what we have right now, because we're literally fixing it and building it how we actually, based on the behavior that we see from our members. And eventually, NetOS can be used in the future as a white label solution also for other office owners or office operators. Our goal is to actually create a network with NetOS powered offices, like you're part of a bigger OnePass or OneFit or ClassPass that you also see in the fitness movement, that with NetOS in the future, that there's just a huge range of locations that offer NetOS tech, so that you can just say like, hey, I can book it over there also, and also there improve the occupancy of other office real estate.
I do want to dive into that. And before I unpack it, I just want to go back to the experience for a second of NetOS as the end user and the customer. So presumably I, as the CEO of Brave Corp, I've got my 10 team members. I'm saying, go download this NetOS app to be able to book into all of our Brave Corp offices across across the Netherlands,
Yeah.
the new ones that we just signed
Yeah.
with Mr. Green offices.
Yeah, for sure.
And now the team can communicate with each other when they're going to be in the offices on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or if they're going to come in on Tuesday or whatever. And then is the experience of the app then that's going to understand what people are saying, communicating, and it's going to automatically book them a space, or are they going to go in and book the space in whatever particular location?
So initially companies can book for themselves, but they don't need to have their whole loops or communication loops outside of the system. So they can see, oh, we're in the office tomorrow with 5. So let's book a 5-person office. Since we're still in a ramp up, we're not fully booked in all locations yet. And that's why I want to really applaud the Trailblazer members that are here, because it's literally something else. And they've said like, okay, I want to stop wasting space. So they can book themselves, but we already have a facility in there. We say like, oh, if you want us to book your space, we can. One of our members, which is quite a large corporation that sits in here, we already book for them. And so that they're always in the back of this building. And another company that also wants to sit in the front. So we help them and we align this. But in the end, once you're looking at 100% occupancy, which we will achieve and maybe beyond, then we will take that over and make sure, right, that we play the Tetris game so that everyone can benefit from it.
Fascinating. Very cool. And I can imagine, obviously the brand of Mr. Green, green in the name, and how you're approaching real estate. Your customer target are companies and the teams that really believe in sustainability, who believe in doing good things to the planet. So there's a lot of brand alignment. I could even see companies choosing to work with you, obviously for the financial aspects of, saving and utilization, all that stuff, but also just because of the alignment around the sustainable aspect.
Well, in the end, profit is a driver of change, right? We only start adopting electric vehicles if somehow there's also financial, not only emotional, but there should also be a financial benefit. That's the same over here. It just helps if you're doing good, right? That you can also feel this in your wallet in a positive way. So we all see that if it costs way more, some companies are willing to do that, but most of them are still looking at their P&Ls, and housing costs are very large expense especially of office operated companies. So if we can help them dragging that down, that's only better.
And so to support that mission, to help companies save in that way, for instance, you've got 2 approaches. One, you're an operator. Mr. Green offices.
Yeah. A properator. We own most of the buildings ourselves, so we call ourselves properator.
Properator. That's a new term. Opco is what my friend Jonathan Wasserman in the U.S. always tweets about. But Opco, I like the word properator. That's really good.
Yeah, proper operator.
So as you are a proper operator, Opco, you're going to continue opening up your own Mr. Green offices, but you've created this new company, NetOS, which is based on the tech platform that Mr. Green uses to be able to help your customers in their own footprints, but also partner with other landlords and operators to be able to enable the same sort of Superflex product.
Yeah, we do.
That's what I want to unpack now, if I may.
Please.
I'm a landlord. I've got 100,000 square feet, 10,000 square meters, and I've got an underperforming asset or leases coming up. I've got a couple floors that I'm probably going to offer on spec suites, Cat A plus, Cat B, managed office, whatever terminology you want to call it.
Yeah.
You're saying, actually, let us partner. Let's create a floor, 10,000 square foot floor, 1,000 square meter floor of NetOS space. And allow these corporates to share on a Superflex way, book Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at lower prices, Tuesday and Thursday at higher prices. Yeah, that's your pitch, kind of, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like we said, we are the electric vehicle. Sorry to say, most conventional office spaces where you just rent 20,000 square feet for 10 years is still the combustion engine. Let's call it this way. What we'd like to add to is the flavor that you see a lot right now is plug-in hybrid, right? And plug-in hybrid gives you the comfort of still having your own office space, which is completely yours. I mean, there's still a lot of companies that say that we just want to have our own space with our own signing on the walls and so on. And it's very nice what you have, but we've got this culture thing that we just want to pursue, which is great, obviously, but they also have their issues of the overflow. And now they're renting out spaces, like we said, for overflow that might only happen once or twice a week, or maybe 3 times a month. So what would happen if you would have this 100,000 square feet office, multi-tenant, conventional space, and you would actually add this Superflex NetOS floor to it? Then you can actually have discussions with your tenants and say, like, we know that you're basically covering lots of your fixed space just to cover your overflow for 1 or 2 days or 3 days a month. Why would you not give some space back, some fixed space, and why would you not use this flexible lung, how we call this, right? This green lung in there with NetOS. And then you can actually use this for your overflow. The only thing what we want to achieve there with landlords is say, like, hey, so you can actually give space back In return, you pay a little bit more per square feet or per square meter. But you get this insurance policy that when people are coming in and you talk to your neighbor and say like, hey, I'm Brave Corp 2, you're Brave Corp 1, we're together in this building. What if your team would come in on Mondays and mine would come in on Tuesdays or the other way around? Then you can actually share this space. And we may just make sure that on Mondays it's Brave Corp 1 and Tuesdays is Brave Corp 2. This way you can actually work with less fixed space, which actually will in return make sure that your output goes up and your integrated housing cost for your tenants comes down, but the yield for your, as a landlord, can go up because per square meter, per square feet, you can actually increase the price. So it's a win-win for both parties and make sure that you get this flexibility in and have a solution there.
So there's been a lot of headlines in the past couple of years about Canary Wharf, London, and some of the banks there. They've got a massive issue with utilization, and there's been talk about giving square foot back and this and that. So you're saying to, let's say HSBC, for instance, you got HSBC, say you've got 10 floors. You got 2 floors that are massively underutilized. Give those 2 floors back to Canary Wharf Group.
Yep.
And then Canary Wharf Group installs NetOS. HSBC can still use those 2 floors on the 20% of the time that they need them.
Yep.
And the other 80% of the time, there's other companies coming in and using that space. And then Canary Wharf Group makes more money because they're getting a little bit higher per square foot price from HSBC, but they're also getting the other customers coming in as well.
And I think what helps there also is that it doesn't feel right anymore with any CEO. I used to be CEO of a large hotel corporation. We had a wonderful head office in Frankfurt, right? And there was Accenture in the same building and so on. And every now and then I walked through the floors and they were all empty. And I said, we could have shared this space together with Accenture. And you can just redesign your work weeks in a way that everyone benefits from it. And I think that nowadays, right, we're more conscious of flying. We're more conscious of our CO2 footprint. And it just doesn't make any sense that we just let expensive space, because it's expensive space, right, go waste. And I always say like an empty Paris-proof office building still is a disaster for the environment. And I think that is something that we have to work on. Livable cities. And if you just ramp up use of office spaces, that's something that we should all want, because it's way more fun to be in this building today when we see a lot of companies, a lot of moving around. It feels like that's a nice vibe. Empty spaces don't feel great.
No, it is a vibe. And I think having energy, you feed off of it, or at least people that come into an office feed off of it.
And you need to be inspired, right? I want to go to the office. I want to meet with my coworkers. I want to work on projects together. It needs to be worth the trip. Otherwise, most people just say like, oh, I'll just stay at home with all consequences.
So the practical aspects of that for Canary Wharf Group, if I can continue using that example, if they kit out the NetOS product in those 2 floors, we're not just talking about deploying a technology stack. There's hardware and software to it, of course.
Yep.
This space we're in now is a brilliantly designed, it's beautiful. Are you saying, because this is Mr. Green, and this is the brand of Mr. Green, it's not necessarily that they're going to have this kit fit out, but what is it from NetOS that Canary Wharf Group's going to put into those 2 floors?
I'm not familiar with the fit out of the Canary Wharf offices of HSBC, but I mean, we've seen many, many very nicely appointed offices and beautifully fit out offices. And I think what needs to happen there is just very simple. What we bring in is the tech stack. So we have signing, we've got screens to work on, run your presentations on, do your whiteboarding on, and so on. We've got our workstations, right? We've got the access control. That's what we're bringing in. So that doesn't have anything to do with the interior design. I think the interior design should fit the fit out of the entire building. What our tech stack does is actually it brings in the identity of the user. Here we've got black ceilings and we've got wallpaper and so on. And I'm glad to hear that you like it, right? But there's also people that say, like, oh, for me, this is a little bit too much, or I prefer my white ceilings. That's all good. In the end, it's about how can you make sure that your employees have plug and play access to the best workstations and work environment. So if we're back in this Canary Wharf building for HSBC, who've just returned 2 floors, right? I only want to share with you if I know that I'm benefiting from it. That's what we do with NetOS, because they will actually be super happy working at our workstations with 38-inch curved and so on, and their own little photo screen on the desk and the drawer and so on, which you will show later on. You just have to offer, and we believe we're doing this, humbly said, just have to offer the best facilities out there in order to make sure that your employees are coming to the office and that you're getting, again, the results that you are aiming for with your company.
you guys have designed something amazing from the tech stack perspective, and I'm happy to say that. How does this change the underwriting? If I'm thinking about putting up a spec suite or a managed office solution where I'm going to provide plug and play to my customers, and typically they're going to pay on a per square foot basis for a time period, 3 years. You're saying, okay, well, actually, you don't have to sign somebody up for 3 years, and they can pick the days they want and maybe the times of the day they're going to come in. How do you underwrite this, though?
So we used a NetOS, and we're currently rolling this all out. The entire NetOS tech stack is just a full OPEX model. So fully operating expenses for a landlord or an operator that says like, okay, I'm going to assign 20% of my total space to this breathing lung we're talking about in order to give flexible access to any of our tenants. We've got a full OPEX solution. So it's just a fixed amount per month per workstation and adding all the different features that we have. And we help the operators in the building actually to create a business case in order to make sure that they actually can make money with it, because that's the goal. And that's why it's so good that we have our own locations, our own office spaces, because this is just our laboratories, right? Here we can actually invent everything. We've been there, we've seen it, we know how to sell it, we know how to onboard it, we know what kind of questions we're getting. That's, I think, one of the major perks where we see like, hey, this other company should definitely have access to this to also benefit from the fact that you can just increase utilization in your building.
So when we're bringing it back to OPEX, I translate OPEX into, okay, well, how much is it going to cost me per square foot? If I've got, 2 floors, 20,000 square feet, 2,000 square meters, my utilities are going to cost me this, my fit out is going to cost me this, my net OS is going to cost me this, and this is how much income I can generate. Are you prescribing a cost per square foot, or does that depend on how the fit out is going to be, and et cetera, et cetera?
I think so. I think it's fair to say that it's depending on the fit out. It's depending on the acoustics and so on. I mean, I see also office spaces of, let's say, 1,000 square foot where 10 desks have been put in, or even 15. Yeah, definitely you will never see all these 15 desks occupied because of the fact that people say like, we're too close to each other, I can't work this way. So what we focus on is actually to have an environment. Over here, I think we've got 120 workstations on 1,600 square meters. So here we have quite spacious places, because that's also allowing people to sit next to each other. We've got quite big workstations, how we call the desks, with the entire tech fit out. So I think it depends on the location where to sit, but it's going to be somewhere between, I think, 70 square foot and 200 square foot per workstation, depending again on what kind of building it is, what the location of the building is, what the total fit out is. And what we do is one of our colleagues here, he's really focused on program management. So he's looking at the entire building, mapping out the entire building, and looking then also at, okay, how can we help the individual tenants? Because it is actually a very relevant problem, right? We hear a lot of landlords of big buildings fighting with big tenants who are taking months to say like, hey, should we take 40,000 square feet or should we take 80,000 square feet? We don't know, because we have no access to data. We have no control over the whereabouts of our employees. So this is just a business case, literally. That's why we're helping also with the business case and say like, okay, would 20% of the total space fitted out with NetOS over here make more sense? Or if we're in Rotterdam in a big office building, would only 10% to start with, and see if you see that the adoption increases, then you can always just ramp it up. But what we just see and hear is that every company nowadays are struggling, especially with their overflows on certain days of the week, where you just say like, yeah, okay, let's just purchase more space than we know we're actually going to need.
I hear that as the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, I can see the benefit here for the customer, and I think the devil's in the details of the underwriting.
Yeah.
And I think that if I've got 20,000 square feet, I want to fit this out. The old way of understanding, I'm going to spend 80 to 100 pounds a square foot to fit out this managed spec suite.
Yeah.
I just need to translate this back into that. So if there's an OPEX cost, I can do that. But let's talk about the upside of that, because if we go back to the fact that people are paying more per square foot now, and you can sell it multiple times over, are you seeing an uplift in income and NOI from that?
For sure. So let's go back one step towards Mr. Green. We just opened in Rotterdam, right? The space, what we have converted into Mr. Green, has a 3x revenue potential as opposed to conventional leasing. So the fact that sharing indeed gives you an uplift, right, is just for us is just super clear. But let's forget about the uplift. what if there was only a 10 or 20% uplift? The question is, what happens if we don't bring something like this in? Then we keep on having discussions with tenants who are actually renting spaces that is not optimized to their use. So we need to come up with some kind of solution for all of them anyhow, because in the meantime, we're struggling and just giving space back. And also, if I'm a landlord of a prime office location somewhere, whether it's Paris proof, yes or no, today we need to offer a concept, right? Let's make a comparison with the big hotel chains back then. The Hiltons, the Marriotts, and the Intercontinental Hotel Group are not growing anymore with Marriott, with Hilton, or with Intercontinental. They're growing with their lifestyle brands. They're growing with their niches, right? Whether it's Kimpton for IHG, or whether it's Moxie for Marriott, whether it's Curio for Hilton, they have to come up with different concepts, because nowadays, right, you have to define who you are and what kind of additional facilities are you bringing in. And that is all flex. Spotify is flex. Any of the subscriptions that we're in right now. So we need also, I think, in the office real estate, it's not a fact like, oh, do I want to? We are forced into this direction, and sharing and bringing in the sustainability and showing the sustainability card, I think, is just something that is appealing to all of us. And we see that especially big corporations are willing to pay more if you bring in the right facilities and put in a certain kind of flexibility to actually breathe along the economic cycles we're rushing through.
That's a perfect segue to one of my big questions on this. And I talk about it a lot. We talked about it last season. We're talking about it this season. Is we know customers want flex. We know customers want service and hospitality, customization. We know even landlords accept that they're going to have to provide it. How they provide it and how much of it is a question. But the big question is, how do you underwrite it, and how do you get credit for that income, even if you're getting a 20 or 30% uplift or 3x uplift?
Yep.
So as a proper rater, Bracco Opco, how do you guys look at the capitalization of all this super flex when it comes to your property values?
Like we said, this Mr. Green offices are the full EVs. That's the people who are just saying, like, we'll just, whether we take a long trip and so on, we just go all in. That's why we believe that NetOS literally has a big opportunity when it comes to into the conventional spaces. Because if you have this huge office building and 80% is still conventional lease and 20% is superflex, and you can actually trade off the superflex already in your square meter price and so on, then the uplift is already there, because you can still have your long lease agreements, right? And you have the ability to actually talk to your tenants and say, like, oh, we understand that you need a little bit less and so on. And if you give back space, it's way easier to sell nowadays. Fixed space with a superflex layer underneath is way easier. So from an underwriting perspective, if you can still have an 80 or 90% fixed income in your building, and you can have an uplift that's going to, perhaps when there's a down cycle, you will end up at 90% because there's a COVID or whatsoever. But in real high terms, you could even grow to 120 or to 125%. I mean, we all know how real estate is leveraged and so on. So what the return on equity can be, or the return on investment can be for landlords and for big investment companies, that can be huge. So I think nowadays, if I were a landlord in a big office with just only conventional spaces, my first concern would be, how do I sell it? How do I make sure that I get to 100% just not utilization, but just that 100% is going to be leased out? That's one. That's already more than difficult enough right now, right? There's office space all over the place. That's why we say there's just too much. We need to just give back and repurpose. So if you have a concept that actually can facilitate this, then the underwriting is already so much stronger than when you don't have this. And we're not even talking about financing with banks and so on. I think if you have this sustainability layer in there that can breathe along with the needs of your tenants, yeah, for me, that's a no-brainer, to be honest, that's going into that direction. We are a proper rater right now. And why are we doing this? We could easily sell this place 3 times or 4 times in conventional spaces, but we don't want to, because then we're not fixing the problem that is there. And when you're in your own building, right, that's easier, because then you can just say, like, I hold off. If we would only have leases, then we would immediately, if it takes too long and Brave Corp comes in and says, like, I won't have this building, I'll just pay whatever I like because I just want your tech and this is just the fanciest office that I have, then we're still old wine in new bags, and we want to be new wine in new bags. And that's why this journey, we just want to make sure that we've got the right parties to work with that are actually looking towards a more sustainable office world. And a sustainable office world is a more profitable office world.
Well, I want to segue into this last question. You set that up quite nicely. So for those who are leaning in, who are you looking to work with right now, and what's next for NetOS and Mr. Green?
Mr. Green is we will just roll this out at our own pace, and having these all these trailblazers with us, right? And being advocates for this concept, because we just see it works. So that's really good. Next step is roll out NetOS, and having other companies also have the opportunity to start using NetOS also in their own buildings, because it's going to be just a white label solution. We don't have to be world famous. All we just want to make sure is that this flexible component, this tech-based flexible component, is going to be found in many multi-tenant buildings, but also big corporate offices and so on, because the possibilities are endless. You don't need a fixed human resource office anymore for 5 days a week. If you can just say it's on Mondays and Tuesdays, on the other days, it's just how can we find a more optimal use of a scarce good, which is called office real estate, right? The fact that there's an abundance also makes us waste it. And we should stop wasting space. I've got kids who are growing up, who want to go into college, who have difficulty in Holland to find a room, right? Just a dorm somewhere. And we just see that there's not enough houses and there's just way too much office space. And if we can just allocate this in a proper way together, that's in the end what we're working towards. And that's always our long-term goal. Like, how can we optimize the utilization of office space? So if any landlord would think about utilization of office space rather than rent coverage, and especially if these two can go hand in hand, I think then we have at least fixed that puzzle together.
That is the equation, and very, very innovative. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for sharing all your insights here. Thank you for sharing the time and hosting this podcast in the Brave Corp studio at Mr. Green at Amsterdam.
Can be found anywhere in the Netherlands. No, it's a pleasure, Caleb, to have you, and thanks so much for taking the journey, because if you want to understand what we're doing, we just have to make sure that you visit us, because that's the best way to explain this.
Absolutely. It made the difference for me. And for everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned a lot. We'll put links to Rogier's LinkedIn as well as Mr. Green and NetOS websites. Until next time, take care of yourself.
If you've enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy our Brave Ideas newsletter. Subscribe today by tapping on the link in the show notes. And don't forget, I'm always on the lookout for buildings to acquire and reposition with brand-led hospitality. If you know a building I should look at, or an owner looking to sell or partner with, drop me a DM or contact us at bravecorp.co. Until next time, take care of yourself.